Okay, so this is my 6th or 7th time doing this video. I don't know what was going on. I had some clicking over my mic and all this stuff that I wasn't really sure about, and it was getting really annoying when I was listening to it. Also, I seem to whistle a lot when I'm whispering, so I'll try not to do that by making sure that I don't purse my lips. Anyway, to get to your question about justified versus non-justified murder, it's a very complex issue, and people have been dealing with this for years, thousands of years, probably since the time we developed any sort of coherent or nominal moral or ethical or societal code, or even indeed the ability to think critically, which is a long, long time ago, possibly even 40,000 years ago, but we're not exactly sure. By we, I mean biologists. I'm not actually part of that. Barely any training in science, but a high school level, grade 12, so that's about it. But anyway, the question, I think, boils down to this, or at least the positions on it. On one hand, they have the person who's doing it for individual gain, and on the other, we have the person who's doing it for societal gain. Not for themselves, but for society in general. For when you enter an army, you enter a contract whereby you give someone else your life in service for your country, your society, your civilization, your set of rules that govern you, as well as motivate you to invent new things and the method by which you interpret and understand the world, which is important to a knowledge-based organism such as ourselves. And the brilliance of this society we currently live in is we understand that although they might be just as certain that they are correct, by they I mean the enemy, or the other, or one of the two combatants, the one who is against us, our opponent, if you will, that they might have equally valid reasons in their own line of thinking. That doesn't mean that we have no reason to defend our own, for we do. It's what we base our lives around. It's defending our version of technology, the way we do things, the way we think, our culture, our society, our economic systems, as well as our resources, and our supply lines, and our trading partners, basically everything to do with society. It's the exact same thing on a social scale as murder, essentially. But as opposed to the individual scale, where the individual who's killing does not necessarily tell the person that they're going to murder beforehand, and never does the person who they're going to murder, or almost never, before, consent to such a thing. But in war, both nations go in as understanding that it's a fight, it's a brawl, it's a natural combat, it's not just murder, it's fighting for a purpose, albeit in a physical and violent way that ends in death. But it's like a shouting match when compared to the ultimate oblivion that you get on the single level. For when you kill an organism, you kill everything that it is. But when you're fighting and you kill an individual organism in a culture, or an individual person in a culture, you're not killing that culture, which is the scale at which the actors of the war are participating on. The large social scale, or the superorganism scale, rather than the individual or singular organism scale. So, you kill it 100% on the individual level, whereas on a war level, you do not. You kill very small parts of it. Very small parts. It's almost like a shouting match. When you shout at someone, you change the way that their brain works. You do. That's what happens. You technically kill that person, but it's not all of that person. And that person does have a chance to rebound and fight back, which is what war is about. That same sort of ability to fight back, and the contest is different than the ultimate oblivion caused by single human-on-human combat, where at the scale where the actors are participating offers 100% oblivion for one, rather than a small, maybe 5% destruction of the other. And usually, since societies and cultures are naturally emergent, it changes both sides, just like the colonialism has changed Europe for the better, I would say. They imported lots of physical wealth, resource wealth, as well as cultural wealth. And the idea for paper money was imported from China, albeit not through colonial means, but it was still imported, as well as chocolate, which is amazing, as you probably well know, and I know that you admitted to, as well as, all the wood from, say, Canada, which is where I am, or spices from the Spice Islands. I mean, who wants bland food? Nobody. Of course not. And what do the other places get? Well, if they didn't actually fight back, usually they would get technology in return, such as the Maori getting guns to facilitate the takeover of New Zealand, well, at least the unification of New Zealand, which some people say was either good or bad, but it's not like one society totally obliterated the other. They sort of joined together, whereas in as in individual combat, there's no coming together other than the coming together of the person's hand through the knife or through the gun, and not even then, to the other person, and totally annihilating it. War as an interesting thing, because life and death is certainly not emergent on the individual scale, but culture, life and death on the macro scale, are, by definition, or at least necessarily, emergent. They change all the time. And war is just a very violent period of social as well as technological change. Now, what really becomes the deciding factor is not whether or not murder on the mass scale is justified, but whether or not the murder that's being done on the mass scale is justified, whether or not the other has a chance, or at least some fighting chance, to fight back, or it is done not as a way to annihilate another, say, genocide, but instead bring them within your own fold of cultural and economic and social ideology, which is basically what's fought about now, rather than what's fought about, back in our ancestry, which was simply land and resources. Now it's knowledge that we're fighting over, or methods of acquiring knowledge, or a pool of knowledge, or a pool of ideas, or cultural norms, or what have you, which has become the mainstay of the human species. And so that's what I think. I think war is justified, simply because it's not about annihilation. It's about coming together, or at least bringing someone else into your social, economic, or cultural fold, albeit by a very crude mechanism. But then again, sometimes it is warranted when you have extremes and people who are attacking you, who are a menace to freedom, as well as the right to choose and the individual right to yourself. Because even in an army, you don't necessarily lose that 100%, especially in a Western army, where you get to choose what you do, and you have to tell your superiors what you want. Okay, I'm out.